Mine is it's kind of like the recency bias I've seen because of Cologne and how the entire narrative is shifting away from Donk, and I'm talking about the who's gonna win number one this year because it was in some ways a three-horse race between Donk, Mondesi,
Okay.
and Zywoo, but now it feels like I mean, the conversation's open, but I just want to give a very strong argument for Donk right now because he's my number one of the year, and I feel like the conversation's getting a little bit muddied because I feel like people are forgetting how incredibly hard it is as an aggressive first in rifler to
Yes.
put up the numbers that Donk is putting up, and for all like the reasons that like rating is bad are mostly due to the fact that survival it helps your rating so much. Like if you save and get a kill,
Yes.
you get good rating. And as opposed to if you're donk and you get two entries but you die, yeah, it's bad. And it's almost like getting I'm not exactly sure how it's calculated, but it's like, if Zywoo saves but he gets a kill versus Donk gets two but dies. It's almost like an equal thing on rating, which
Yeah.
is kind of stupid. And the thing is, like, you look at the numbers, and Donk and Zywoo for the year on like LAN top 20, they have the exact same rating, but Donk has like five higher ADR. He has a higher KPR on top of that, but he just dies more because he just keeps running in as his team wants him to do. And I feel like the conversation is now kind of shifting because, and also like I just want to remind everybody, we haven't had a rifler number one since 2017 who was a last in, very baity entire system designed for him, Coldzera. The last time we even had a remotely aggressive rifler at number one was Olaf Meister even before that. And I feel like people are just kind of like looking purely at rating and saying like, nope, they got the tied rating. Like the conversation's on. It's like, are we are we forgetting how different their role is and how Donk is still, despite a bad Cologne, a transcendent player for being able to put up those numbers with actually being an aggressive rifler? Like Nico's been trying for a couple years here. Elijah's trying all the time to do this as an aggressive rifler. Like I feel like there needs to be more aggro rifler sympathy from the fans and from people that are putting these arguments together because this is a role that is notoriously, I just say it's flat out the hardest role to be consistent on. And for some reason, it's like, oh, the rating's the same, the conversation's on. It's like to me, it's not. To me, Donk's still firmly in the lead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mega biased, so I mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think that operas just farm the rankings and like the rating, like you're saying, just because it's just naturally better for them. But it is so hard, like you're saying, to do what he's doing. And it's not even just that he's an aggressive rifler. He's like actually an entry. Like when people say entry, they're like referring to people that like are getting openings, and that's different. Like I would say that I'm not as much of an entry as Donk is, because Donk, when they are going for, execute strats where they're like starting off the round, like we kind of changed my role to be more like that, but I haven't always been like that. And it's way harder to be the entry when like time comes, like in all parts of the round, where, if you're comparing Donk to like me or Electronic, we like being more of like space takers. Like there's so stuff that's happening on part of that. We're getting like resources in the beginning of the round to, feel out what's going on. Flash here, flash there. We're trying to get like an opening and get ourselves set up and get into like a good mid round with our team. But on Spirit, Donk is completely like with the team the entire way through. They don't want him lurking. Like on Ancient, for example, he plays like the elbow, like the mid brawler guy. And when it's time to like throw mid nades and try to like bait that like they're gonna go for mid, they just have Donk somewhere else. Chopper is the one that's throwing those nades. They want to make sure that he's in like the brunt of like the execute. And the hardest part about being the entry, which is why it sucked so much for me when I first like got into like the pro scene in 2015. If you're the entry and your team sucks, you're just gonna be the entry death every round. Like they're not blind, you're opt, like you're just dead instantly. And that can happen so much. The fact that Donk is like running up there and he's not just insta dying to the op and just like not just being like the first like entry death, that's really, really hard. And I feel like unless you played that role, like you don't understand like how hard that is. Cause I know how hard it is. I was getting like 16-2'd by like the best teams in the world, just entering, just being the guy jumping out, dying. Donk is doing that. He's running out there in his first year. Well, I don't know if you want to call like last year's first year, his second year of like Pro CS, where he's just running in with the pack and just fragging out. That's really difficult.
By the way, I'll give an analogy because I agree. The weirdest thing about the interpretation of that Reddit thread, Maui, where it was all the players listed by rating, is the logic went, well, now that Ziwu has made the same rating as him, Ziwu's number one. It's like, but if you actually understand the roles, that is more impressive for Donk. What are you talking about? Like, Ziwu is either an AWPer or a mid-round fucking rifler who doesn't even go in first. So in that scenario, it's way harder to do what Donk's doing. Like, I don't think people realize how insane that is. And then also, right, you actually saw in that terrible game against G2 what it's like for Spirit when Donk doesn't do that. People like Magix and Chopper are in hell, bro. They're just getting chewed up all over the place. No wonder Zontix looked like if he wasn't getting kicked off the team, he wanted to fucking just leave and exit the earth, like, and be swallowed up. Like, that was hell for those guys. Like, they all suddenly found the game twice as hard, it felt like, because the craziest thing about Donk is it's no exaggeration. He doesn't just run in and win his duel, right? Obviously, no one can ever actually, as an entry, kill both people each time. Let's say he kills the first one and then like dinks or shoots the other guy. Like, can you imagine how much easier it is for the fucker with the MP9 behind him, for Shiro to re-peek into that? It's a kill every time. It's basically like one bullet and you get the kill. So he's making also kills that don't actually come onto his fucking scoreboard for his teammates. And I've got a stat for you here, as if to show how even rating can be actually a little bit deceiving. So I always say my king stat is kills per round because it's the only one you can't fake. If you're at tier 1, you can do all sorts with the rating. I actually think you can see people like Frozen. Sometimes they don't have to have the craziest kills because they play a little bit baity. They save a little bit. They're at the end. They're not always the one who has to take the duel. The reason why the KPR is bonkers is this guy has played, they've listed on here 10 tournaments. Like, obviously, one was playing for Katowice with 3 maps, and one is like the first Swiss of the major, right? Of the 10 tournaments he's played in 6 of the 10, he has above a 0.88 kills per round, and he is going in first or second. That is impossible. Like, he is doing for the rifle what Simple did with the AWP. Like, because he's had like, remember, he's had like 2 whole tournaments, 2. The Betbo way came second. He had over a kill per round. With the rifle, remember, we've all just complained, like I was saying, for the last 6-7 years, it's just AWPers just taking their peaks and re-peaking. They get all the kills, right? Now, what you all want, the rifle god has come, and we're not even acknowledging it. We're actually just going, yeah, but Zimu just won the tournament, so it's obviously him, isn't it? I actually think that whole discussion is so fugazi, because people are just prisoners in the moment. Remember, right, we have a couple of smaller, we have the Pro League, we have the IEM Rio, but we have the Major as well, right? I actually think number 1 is going to be, unless you do what we did, you try and do a stylistic eye test breakdown, which is harder, and judge the roles. If you want to go off stats and you want to go off MVPs and stuff, then it's not going to be the players that decide this number 1. This isn't Simple versus Ziwu. This is just going to be whose team ends up winning the Shanghai Major and wins more of the tournaments. Like, spoiler, if Monacy's G2 really frags out and they go, he's going to be number 1. It won't matter why he's number 1 or why we all say that. Meanwhile, if Ziwu, if they win all the rest, if they win the Major, if they're in all the finals, he gets it, then he's going to win, isn't he? But that won't just be him doing it. Like, we're acting like it's going to be who's better as a player. I actually think the coolest thing about this race is all 3 have very distinct styles. You have Donk with his bonkers style of rifling. Monacy's sort of like the all-around AWPer who actually plays Simple-esque and has super ego plays but wins clutches. And then Ziwu is like transitioning between like the dominant CT AWP sides on certain maps where he's the old Ziwu, and then on T sides he actually is like one of the best riflers and he's flowing in the mid-rounds. Like, I actually think what's coolest is this is actually what you want in the game, boys. Even though I'm obviously like an old school guy who just wants Simple to come back and be the king because whatever, comfort food, innit? But I actually think it's beautiful right now. It's actually one of the best eras ever to watch these guys all battling it out. And the difference is they could all be number 1 and they would all deservedly be number 1. Let's just say that. Even if you think it's Ziwu, he would deserve to be number 1. They're all fucking sick players. They're really good.
Yeah, it's so hard because I think a lot of it, like you said, just comes down to who has the better team. Because if, like you saw, if you get 13-1, 13-2'd, your rating is going to be crap.
Yes.
Like, there's just no way around it. Like, sometimes I think people don't realize that. It's like, oh, look at this guy. He has such bad rating compared to this other one. Even though, like, if you watch both of them, you know that they're both really similar in skill. They're both really good. But yeah, his team, he just got 13-1, 13-2, so his stats are just worse. So I think that's just natural. And yeah, I think the race is so close. For me, it's definitely between Donk and Monacy right now. But I mean, what Donk did in the first half of the year is just bonkers.
Yes. By the way, I even think I always have this line I say, Lige, where I say in sports, because I follow basketball, Michael Jordan sadly ruined the game for everyone because now every star has to do what he did. Never lose, always be in the finals, always be the leading scorer, always be the MVP. And it's like, that's not normal. Everyone else didn't do that in history. Simple ruined it. Yep. Like, if everyone remembers that GOAT year where Simple had, and famously there was that dream at Marseille where he got the MVP even though Astralis won, right? The reason he got the MVP, guys, is there's a map in that final where Astralis wins like 16-4 or something and he goes like 24-6. Like, no human can ever do that. Like, if that makes you think that's what star players should do, he has broken your brain. And don't worry, he broke a lot of people's brains, as we talked about earlier in the conversation. So, okay. To see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content, well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.